Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this is a review for your quiz on Tuesday. So Anita brings $15 to her grandma's house. These dolls represent 20% of Anita's doll collection. Now it says as shown in the diagram. Oops, I'm sorry. What is the total number of dolls in Anita's doll collection? It says complete the diagram and enter your answer in the box below. So, what we've got is essentially a diagram. We've got $15 here, and that's 20% of the diagram. Well, if that's 20%, that means it's 1/5, because 20 times 5 is 100. So that means we need 5 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so each of these represents 20%. And since they're all equal, that means each section has 15 in it. And so that's 15 plus 15 is 30, plus 15 is 45, and 45 plus 15 is 60. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 15 is 75. And so there are 75 dolls. For question 2, in Part A, in art class, 40% of the students used watercolors for painting. 18 students in the art class used watercolors. How many students were in the class? Then it says for Part B, draw a double number line excuse me, or a tape diagram to prove your answer. Well, a good idea here is start with Part B. Okay, use the double number line or the tape diagram to answer Part A. So if you do the double number line, okay, so you got students and percent. Make it a little smaller so it's easier to see. Well, we know 40% used watercolors and that 18 used watercolors. So we know 40 is 18. Well, we're looking for how many were in the class. So we're looking for 100%. Well, we can't get to 100 by counting by 40s. But if I split 40 in half, then I get to 20. Well, if I count by 20s, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, I can get there that way. And so since I cut 40 in half, I count 18 in half. So I'm counting by 20 on the bottom number line in the percentages, and so I'm counting by 9s on the students. So 18, 27, 36, 45. And so my answer is 45 students. Now, if I do a tape diagram, it's very similar. Okay. So we know that that from here to here is 100%. And again, we know that there's 40%. But just like with the double number line, it's not going to be 40 because I can't do 40 and 40 and 40 to get 100. That's going to be too much. But if I split 40 divided by 2, I get 20. Well, I can split this into 20s and get to 100. I could do divide by 4 and get 10s. And 10s will be 100. So either way works. I could divide by 5 and get 8. Problem is, 8 doesn't get me to 100. Okay. Now, I could divide by 8 and get to 5, but that would make this difficult because dividing this by 8 gives me a decimal. And I can't really have decimal point students. And so that's difficult. So we kind of want to stick with 2 and 4. Doesn't matter how short the person is, they're not going to be point whatever people. So I'll do this once with the 20 and once with the 10, just to show that it's the same thing. So if I cut this divide the 40 by 2 into 20, well, 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100. And again, since I divided the 40 by 2, I divide the 18 by 2, and I get my 9, and so that's 9 in each section of 20. And so 9 plus 9 is 18. Plus 9 is 27, plus 9 is 36, plus 9 is 45. Now, if I do this, but this time I divide by 4 to get 10 sections. Now, it works, but I'm still going to have a decimal place people. It's just a little simpler decimal place people. Okay. So I get my 10 sections. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100. Well, then I do 18 divided by 4, and I get 4.5. So that means each one of these sections is 4.5. So 4.5 people. And so again, realistically, that's not really a thing because you can't have half a person, like I said. And it doesn't really matter how short they are, they're still not half a person. And so we look at 4.5, and 4.5 makes 9. And so 2 more is another 9. So that's 18. 2 more makes another 9 for 27. There's another 9 for 36, and another 9 for 45. Okay, different approaches, still get 45. And so, like I said, it's easier if you start with part B to answer part A. Okay, question 3, part A. Natalie uses a 15% off coupon when she buys a camera. The original price of the camera is $55. How much does Natalie save by using the coupon? Show your reasoning. And then, real quick, if I scroll all the way back to it, I'm guessing the show your reasoning part is part B. Give me a second. Okay, so yeah, part B is just the credit for actually showing your work. So if you don't show your work, you lose half the credit for the question. So if all you do is put an answer and you don't actually type in how you got what you did to get your answer, then you get no credit. So you actually have to explain your reasoning. Okay, so no explanation, no answer. Stopped going away. All right, so the original price of the camera is $55. So how much does she save? Well, several different ways of doing this. Personally, I'm a fan of just multiplication, but that doesn't mean that's what you have to do. See, me, I'm a fan of just doing 55 times 0.15. And saying, well, 5 times 5 is 25. Carry the 2. 5 times 5 is 25, and 2 is 27. Then 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 5 is 5. And then we add. That's a 0. So 5, 12, carry 1, 7, 8. 2 decimal places. And so the answer is $8.25. See, for me, I'm a fan of that. However, for those of you who that doesn't work, or that is not something that you are okay with, good with, comfortable with, whatever, there's a table. So, money, percent. So, 55 is 100%. Well, me, I want to get down to 15. So, I would say divide by 10. That gets me to 10. And so, divided by 10 gets me to 5.5. Well, so that gets me to 10%. Well, I need 15%. So, I'm going to divide by 10 again. Well, actually, yeah, we can divide by 10 again, because I know that's easier for some of you. And so that gives me 1. And so that's 0.55. And so now we have a couple of options. I can do 0.55 times 15 to get to 15%, or I can do times 5 and times 5 and so then 0.55 times 5, well, that's 5, carry 2, 25, 27, 2 decimal places, that's 2.75. And now I have 10 and 5. Well, 10 plus 5 is 15. And so I add these two, the 550 and 275. Well, 0 plus 5 is 5. 5 plus 7 is 12. Carry 1. 5 and 2 is 7, plus the 1 is 8. And so 825. And again, I could have done the 15 times 0.55. Okay. We could do a double number line. And so we know that 100% is $55. And so again, it doesn't matter how we get all the way down to 15, as long as we get there. And so I could say, well, I'm going to use this color just to show. I'm going to divide by 2 and get my 50%. And so divided by 2, 55 divided by 2 is 2750. Okay. Well, I need to get lower. So I decide I'm going to go from here to 5. So I'm going to divide by 10 and say 5%. And so 5% now is 2.75 because I divided by 10. Well, I need 15%. So 10, 15, because I'm counting by 5s. Well, 275 and 275. Well, that's 0, carry 1. 14, 15, carry 1. And so that's 550. And then 550 plus 275 is 875. And so there we did it with a number line, double number line. And so your explanation, since it's on the computer and you have to actually type in, show your work or explain how you did it, well, depending on which method you did. I used a double number line. I found 50% of the price. Then I found 5% of the price. From there, I counted by $2.75 until I got to 15%. And if you use the table, you would do something similar, except you would explain it based on how you use the table. Okay. Question 4. In a town, there are 1,050 people who can vote. There are 2 candidates in the election for the town's mayor. The results of the election are shown in the table. What percentage of the 1,050 people actually voted in the election? Well, we start with adding these numbers. Well, 8 and 2 is 10, carry 1. 5 and 7 is 12, and 1 is 13, carry 1. 5 and 6, so that's 630 over 1050. Okay, from here, I would, now again, this is me, I would divide by 10, which gives me 63 over 105. And then from there, it's, well, 105 is 100%. So number and percent. So that's around 100%. We want to know what 63 is. So we want to break this down into something that goes into 63. So we divide. Well, we know 5 goes into this. 5 goes into this. So let's divide by 5. 5 goes into there 21 times. 5 goes into here 20 times. And so then it's a matter of, well, what do we do to 21 to get to 63? Well, we multiply by 3. Well, 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6. So, times 3 is 60. And so that's 60%. 60% of the people who can vote voted. And all right, and so now there's one more question that that is showing up on EdSite that wasn't showing up on the pre-made quiz. So I put the gist of it right here. So how much is 25% of 8? So, same idea. Number, percent. So, 100% is 8. We want to get down to 25%. So, to get to 25, we divide by 4. So, we divide by 4. And we get 2. And so that's our answer. Now, if we want to do a tape diagram, well, 100 is the entire percentage. And so if I divide that by 4, that's 20, that's 20, or if I divide that by 25, I apologize. That's 4 sections. So that means 4 25s. And so 8 divided by 4 is 2. So each section is 2. And so, come back here. 1 section is our answer, and so it's 2. And that's it. That's our answer.